Okay. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. My name is Julie, and I'm the events manager at Roundabout Books in Bend, Oregon. If you're not familiar with our bookstore, if you're local, please come by. If you're not, we ship to everywhere in the US. So if you have not had a chance to order a copy of Cabin 135, we would love it if you would order it from our store. Our website is roundaboutbookshop.com. You need that shop part because there is another Roundabout Books in the US. We are so grateful for this Zoom opportunity with the pandemic. We have tried very hard to keep our author events going. And for so many of our authors, you know, not being able to go on a tour is hard when you have a new book. That's a lot of the times how you sell your book. So I'm just so thankful that authors have been open to this Zoom option and that you, our customers, readers, friends, etc., have been open to, again, Zoom meetings, because I know we've all been on a lot of Zoom meetings this year. So we are still expecting our books. So if you have not had a chance to get one, please give the bookstore a call, 541-306-6564, and we can put your name down so that as soon as we get the books, you will get a copy, because today is officially the launch day of Katie's book. So that's one of the reasons too that it's so fun, because books come out on Tuesdays, which is very strange. It's just the industry standard. And, you know, having an event on a launch day is just such a fun way to celebrate the birth of this book. It really is. It's a baby shower in a sense. So I'm so excited that everyone is here. If you have questions during the event, please feel free to put them in the Zoom chat. And then towards the end, we will open it up and we will have time for everyone to ask questions. So with that, Katie, I'm actually just I'm gonna turn it over to you. I think most people know why they're here, and that's to talk about your book, Cabin 135. And I don't want to take any more time away from you for that. So please, it's all you.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Okay. Thank you, Julie. I really appreciate that Roundabout Books is hosting this event today. What a weird year it's been. And here we are with Zoom and being able to get people together from all over. I mean, looking at, so many people I know have joined, and some live in this area in Oregon, and others are, you know, different places and in Alaska. See if I can keep my train of thought. And one person has connections to both Oregon and Alaska, and that's Abby, and she's the one who actually asked Roundabout if they would host this event. So she thought of it, and it's just amazing that it's happening too. And on the launch day, with so many things haven't happened this year. So my idea as to what to do for this hour was just read to you guys for an hour, but Julie assured me you would rather hear me talk some about how I came about writing the book. So let's see what I can do with that. But I am going to read some sections, because since the book is only just showing up, except for Carl, who managed to have one delivered last week or something, so you'll probably appreciate hearing some of the writing. Okay, so the start of this book, well, there's like two parts of it. One is, since it's a memoir, lived experience, mine, which goes back to, I don't know, I could probably find some spot in it from the late 60s into the 70s, into the 80s. And so there's a lot of that, but I only started writing anything besides journals, writing more formally in 2005, when I started taking night classes at University of Alaska, Anchorage, in writing. And mostly I did essays and travel writing, and I was pretty encouraged. Just getting into, if you want to write, getting into a forum where people are, giving really good constructive criticism and the kind of help to developing your writing where you want to keep going forward with it. So after several classes over a couple of years, I decided I would just, change my life from being an economist to being a writer, and not worrying about getting rich as a writer or something like that. And so tried to apply to the MFA program at the University of Alaska Anchorage. So you're getting a little resume part here. I guess that's where I'm starting. And had the timing to have applied the year that they put their whole program on hiatus to reconfigure it as a low residency program. So I got the phone call that said, "Oh, thanks for your application, but we're not taking any new students next year." So it's sort of like a journey where I had to find who my people or my family for writing was going to be. And the next year I applied to the Rainier Writing Workshop, which is an MFA program at Pacific Lutheran University, and was accepted. And that's a low residency program, super good program. And it took 3 years, 4 summers and 3 years working with mentors and taking like intensive class period over, probably it was about 10 days each summer. So that was a way to be able to focus on writing more. And what I was doing for a living, working as a researcher and economist, I was managing to make those hours be less and make writing be more. So I was pretty lucky in that way. And so had the time to develop my writing. And at the end of that, I had a collection of poetry and a collection of essays, basically a thesis. So, and this is a very strange forum to be talking, because if I was in a room with you guys, it would be very personal, and this is a very flat screen, so I just thought I'd put that in. And okay, so I had a collection of essays and a lot of contacts through the Rainier Writing Workshop, but we were also moving, and we moved to Oregon from Alaska because of family reasons, to be closer to some family in that time period. So the random occurrence that made a big difference in developing this book, which you now know began as a bunch of essays, but the title clearly says it's memoir, was that one of the people with the Rainier Writing Workshop suggested that I might find a conference, the ASLE conference, which is Association for ASLE Society, maybe it's, oh my gosh, Society for Literature and the Environment. And they were having a conference in Juneau, so I used my airline miles and managed to get to the conference, and to make it seem more official, submitted a paper idea, which was a short essay of what I had learned from some volunteering, particularly up on the Yukon Flats, refuge for a bird study. And they liked it, so I got to go up there and make a short presentation in a room that had like 5 different people making presentations, and there were more of us doing presentations than were in the audience. But one of the guys in the audience was the acquisition editor from the University of Alaska Press. So that was a real connection, and he saw something that he liked in that essay, and said, well, you can send me some more stuff. So I tried sending him different things. I tried poetry, he wasn't interested. I tried essays, he was more interested in the essays. And that's even though I had met people from UA Press, University of Alaska Press, through the MFA program, there was not a connection there with the writing that I was doing, at least that I knew of. And so this started, that was 2012. So I spent basically 8 years in communication with the University of Alaska Press, and more than one editor. I mean, it just kind of evolved, writing and rewriting. And eventually, after, I don't know, a couple years more of working on the essays, I was advised that it would be better as a memoir than essays. So if I didn't have people who sometimes, reside in my head, my friends saying, you better keep doing this, I think that would have been a good spot to do something else. So I kept working on it, and they were pretty insistent about getting rid of the essays, and I thought I could probably turn it into a memoir. So I had my printout of essays, which was either book length or nearly book length, and just went at it with the scissors. Until I had, and then restacked it all, and this is still in the computer era, so I restacked, reorganized my essays, not cut and paste on the computer, but on the dining room table and the floor and everywhere else that I could, and I just shuffled them. So it's kind of, to me, it's still kind of funny because a lot of those essays are still in this memoir. They just don't look like essays anymore. Okay, so I had a memoir, and you know what? I was going to go directly to reading something to you guys, so I better do that before I end up running out of time just talking about all of this. So one of the main characters, it's just a big shift, one of the main characters in the book is the house. And the house, cabin 135, of course we didn't call it that when we lived there. That came out of research for the book. The house was built in 1935 for the Matanuska Colony Project, which was one of FDR's New Deal agricultural resettlement projects to try to help farmers who were having a really rough time in the upper Midwest part of the Dust Bowl. And some of them, about 200 families, ended up in Alaska. So this was one of the houses that they lived in. One of the families lived in. And in the memoir, there's a series of repeating headings. So once in a while, you'll come across, like, say, cabin, or earth, or terrain, ice, water, different kind of generic headings that kind of help stay rooted to what's going on in the book. Okay, so I'm going to read a little bit about the house. Cabin. The house did not come with an owner's manual, although in the basement, cardboard labels dangling from copper pipes indicated which direction to turn the valves in order to switch from the oil furnace to the coal furnace, or vice versa. The oil furnace was situated in the basement, the garage house the coal-burning furnace. Both furnaces heated and pumped water through a system of baseboard radiators. The steep pitch cabin roof transitioned to a nearly flat roof over the garage. Inside the garage, the log house wall had been coated with urethane, a sprayed-on chemical intended for insulation. The original insulation, laid along each log as the walls were being erected, would have been oakum, jute-like fibers embedded with a tarry substance, or maybe moss. The urethane hid the logs and any hint of oakum or moss. A layer of gray paint, as dingy as river silt, did not improve the wall's lumpy appearance. When we moved in, urethane also blanketed the roof, an uncommon roofing material. The inch-thick foam was painted with a silvery compound that was supposed to be waterproof. The shiny surface attracted magpies that pecked holes in the roofing, exposing crisp and porous foam underneath. We hired a roofing contractor who replaced the bird-pecked roofing with composite shingles on the steep cabin roof and hot mop tar onto the garage roof. The contractors also added 6 inches of insulation to the cabin roof and installed a layer of plywood over the garage roof boards to increase stability, he said. At the time, we did not notice anything structurally amiss in the garage. So the house had a lot of idiosyncrasies, and we moved in 1983. So it had, you know, over 40 years of different people tweaking things in it. So let's see, I made a bunch of notes what I was going to talk about, and I've just skipped through most of them. Okay. So I can't emphasize enough the effect of having friends and fellow students and mentors and just family, pretty much anybody who had time and expressed any interest in reading some of the sections to give feedback and say, you know, what they found interesting, what they found not interesting. And of course, sometimes I totally ignored them, but at least I knew what people found interesting and not interesting. Let's see. Oh, yeah. And besides what other people found interesting at various drafts, and there have been so many drafts, I have boxes and boxes of printouts. Someday, I don't know what I'm going to do with them all. Yeah, the recycle bin maybe. But as this was going on so long, is that I found one of those, you know, you get questions in your head. One of the questions that just stayed in my head is, what is interesting? And I'm old enough that, you know, if a book takes this long to write, how many more books would I ever write? So I became determined not to spend my time writing anything that was boring or tedious. And of course, I had to really work on my writing skills. It turns out you can write about almost anything, any weird thing, and make it interesting. You know, if you can figure out how to do that. So I find that I could write about things that were really pretty mundane, like painting a wall, or ripping out carpet, or digging dandelions, and there were ways to make it interesting. But then there's other things that I didn't care about writing about at all. Like there's very little about my family in this book and my children, because I decided I didn't want to write that kind of a memoir. I want to write about nature, environment, how people and groups of people interact with their surroundings, and so various themes. Migration. I'm really interested in migration. People move, things change, you adapt, you don't adapt, and of course I'm interested in climate change. So I've got a lot of material in this book that I hope makes you know, causes people to think about the mundane perhaps in a different way. And I'm going to read another short section. Try to be very organized. Let's see. This is one of the sections that's called Earth, and it's in the yard surrounding the house. Gardening. I'm empress and laborer, nanny and tutor. I attempt to direct growth, but also find much that's out of control. Is this what I learned from my grandmother? The physical and mental effort required to eradicate and excise, but also the patience and imagination to experiment. Each summer I anticipate how the garden's story will unfold, but a new twist always surprises me. The garden speaks shape, color, sound, motion, and time. The garden is macro and micro, ideas and plans. The garden is only semi-tamed. This garden appeals to my senses. I breathe scents of flowers, birds trill. I hear a beguiling whisper of wings. The trees have leafed by the time I'm on my knees beneath the old lilac, raking dried leaves with my fingers and lifting detritus into a bucket. The earth leaches dampness through the fabric of my jeans. Prodding for quackgrass roots, I turn up a bird wing and a minuscule skull bleached white, the beak bone curved like a fingernail. Above me, window glass, mirrors clouds and shrubs, conjuring a phantom landscape deadly to birds. Beside me, lilac branches with the girth of small trees protrude from a gnarled root knob like a botanical being in a Tolkien landscape. Beneath the shrub, a carpet of lilac sprouts has even invaded pernicious clots of clover. I blame myself for the seedlings because I neglected to clip the lilac's faded blooms the previous summer. Seeds matured and dropped, thousands of them. Hoeing would have offered a quicker way to excise the sprouts, but I felt empathy for once for the old lilac's progeny. Digging with a trowel, I lifted out several clumps and packed the seedlings into buckets. After that, and feeling somewhat absolved, I callously yanked the remaining lilac shoots, tossing them along with hunks of clover into the wheelbarrow. Later, I dumped the wheelbarrow at the edge of the woods and carefully placed 2 little tubs of lilacs on the shady north side of the garage. I intended to transplant the sprouts, perhaps along the edge of the lawn, where in a dozen years they would form a fragrant hedge. Okay, so I have asides. I'm going to skip an aside in the interest of giving you the rest of this particular story. A few weeks later, I was pulling vetch that had threaded the columbines in a plot reclaimed from the driveway by the front door. A pickup truck turned off the road and slowly motored toward our house. Expecting the occupants were evangelists or selling something, I considered various greetings in the vein of, "I'm not interested." The truck parked, and a middle-aged man climbed unhurriedly out of the cab. He stared at me doubtfully. "My mother is looking for trees and saw your bush," he said. The trees Chuck and I had planted across the lawn had not yet grown large enough to block the view of our yard. The large lilac, with its cloud of lavender blooms, was perfectly visible from the road. An old woman wearing a cotton dress and headscarf clambered out of the passenger seat and walked slowly toward me. Her pale eyes met mine, and she spoke deliberately, as if each word was a great effort or of the utmost importance. "Bush," she said, and after a pause, "flower." She swept her hands expansively as if holding a bouquet. Inhaling audibly, she smiled at the notion of a delightful fragrance. I smiled back at her, cradling my own invisible bouquet and breathing the aromatic scent of lilacs. She beamed, her smile becoming a grin, and blurted, "Home, like home." Migration. I shared something fundamental with this woman, something as crucial to identity as memories and stories, and more deep-seated than nostalgia. I hadn't emigrated across an ocean to a place where the language and even the alphabet was different. I had only migrated from the Pacific Northwest. But that move encompassed a shift from desert steppe to subarctic. Uprooted from another life, the old woman grasped at memories like birds to hold and give to her children. Whatever actual circumstances led her to my doorstep, she yearned for lilacs, a shrub that attracts hummingbirds and butterflies, wafts perfume through open windows, and freshens memory. Earth. I motioned toward the gnarled shrub with pale lavender blooms. "Lilac, lilac," she repeated, her eyes crinkling. The man smiled but didn't say anything. I walked around the garage and brought back a tub of lilac sprouts. "Here, take these," I said. "They'll grow, like home." "Thank you," she said, smiling even more. "Like home," she said with utmost satisfaction. "Thank you," the man repeated. The two of them climbed into the pickup and drove slowly away. Migration. I did not see this pair again, and I only surmise that they migrated to Alaska after the Chernobyl nuclear disaster. Even 3 decades later, I find this story oddly unsettling, and I puzzle over the confluence of events that brought the older woman and somewhat younger man to my house, where I handed them a bucket of lilac sprouts, which made the old woman very happy. The questions raised are multiple and profound, and may have no answers, except to recognize that in dire situations we adapt or we migrate and attempt to adapt. So that's got to be one of my favorite sections in the whole book. But there's a lot of like wondering about stuff. Okay, let's see. What else can I tell you that's interesting? Okay, I mentioned the colony. The thing about the book, which I may have already mentioned, is that it's not chronological. So the headings help keep straight or help indicate when there's going to be a time jump. So there is actually a heading called time that shows up. So it kind of helps the reader be like, oh, wait a minute, now we're 50 years ago. So there's clues along the way as you read. And then there's a few other geographies besides Alaska, which I found gave like more, at least for me, more insight, and or they're farther more distant geographies than where this house was and the yard, which is in the Matanuska Valley in Alaska, north of Anchorage by about 40 or 50 miles. And the other geographies are the Arctic, Switzerland, Iceland, and then, well, Denali National Park, which is, only, I don't know, 150, 200 miles away, still some distance. Okay, I've got another section to read. Almost done with this. Let's see, where did it go? This cracks me up about the house. Another one about the house. So you'll have to read the book yourself to find, all the details and all the different places and how my mind works. But here's a section about the house again. Cabin. Surely February is the least likely month to sell a house in Alaska. Inconveniences abound. Freezing weather precludes outdoor painting. Wind and storms forestall chores like shuffling excess belongings to another location. Someone house hunting in February would need to look beyond dirty snowdrifts, drafty doorways, frosted windows, and drearily lit rooms. To buy an Alaska house in winter, you would have to be attuned to potentialities, anticipating summer, imagining abundant daylight and profusions of greenery. By the time we bought Cabin 135, it had changed ownership 4 times, including twice in February. After nearly 20 years, the first owners, the LaRoses, sold to a fellow named Yaden in April, which in Alaska, often still winter. 3 years later, in February 1957, Yaden sold to Hugh Adams, and 5 years after that, again in February, the Webbs bought the colony-era cabin from Adams. Chuck and I bought the house in May, but judging from the faded for sale sign, the house had been on the market all winter. May begins with lawns like dried buckskin and trees, a network of twigs, catkins, a quiver. A week or 2 later, verdure drifts across forest and garden. February, though, is the heart of winter, with warm days still several months off. I suspect the house of complicity in an owner's desire to sell during the winter. And I marvel that any buyer came forth. Perhaps the house wished to shake off inhabitants like a dog flings water after a swim. Maybe the house played little jokes with heat or electricity, or was in cahoots with the wind, loosening the door latch, welcoming Arctic blasts, and chortling like an uncle who devises a prank that no one else finds hilarious. Selling in winter probably had a logical explanation related to the owner's personal circumstances, a change of job or health, although I would never discount the influence of blowing snow, sub-zero chill, incessant chattering of the Matanuska, and even the house's antics. So, of course, Alaska has, how many seasons? You'd like to think 4 seasons, but when you live there, you may think it's only 2 seasons, summer and winter. And anyone inundated with tourist information is mostly going to see summer. And most people who travel there on vacation usually go in the summer, which is so green and so beautiful and wonderful, and also with mosquitoes. But winter is a lot of what living in Alaska is about. And if you crave winter experiences, read my book. There's a whole bunch of winter in it. Okay, a few more things about the writing. I'm just looking at the time. So, probably a bunch of you are writers, and you may be in different writing groups and writing critique groups. And really universally, the people who read writing, no matter how much you write about what you feel, what you think yourself, your group is still going to say, we want to know more about what's inside your head and what you're thinking and how you feel about things and all of this. And that is really hard to do. So, so I worked on it, and the book ended up being what it is, probably not as much gritty insights as anybody wants to know, but an awful lot about nature and environment and wondering what the heck is going on, you know, as people move through their lives and across terrain and change things. But that makes it sound real global, but then at the same time, what did I do to change things in this house, in the yard, in the garden, in the yard? That's a new word for garden and yard. And anyway, that's some of what I find to be really interesting. What we can learn from any of that, because isn't that what we're all trying to do? Is well, I don't know, live and understand what's going on around us and try to make a difference in some way or another. So, if that makes a lick of sense. I also find humor and whimsy and serendipity to be very intriguing, and some, like the people who showed up at my house and went off with a bucket of lilac sprouts, is just like, how does that even happen? I know that wouldn't happen in the year 2020. It just couldn't happen. Nobody would do that. And that was in the 1980s sometime. So, I don't know, I suppose that example shows how times change. So I have one more little short section to read, and then I will see what happens when people ask questions. Let's see, this one, there's different plants that show up a lot, you know, sort of like touchstone themes in the book. Lilacs, as you can probably guess, is one of them. Raspberries is another. The raspberries are all through this, and it's got to be a metaphor for something. Earth. Someone else created the raspberry patch, but that time of planting is long gone. It's as if this is the right place for raspberries. But tension exists between our desires and nature. Raspberries don't care about my efforts and puny tools, and I'm not the first caretaker who has tried to beat back meadow and forest. In the spring, I rake dried leaves and vaguely sense blisters blooming inside the gloves on my winter soft palms. My movements acquired a tempo like Gertrude Stein's writing, with rhythm and a bit of ridiculosity. She starts with a light in the moon and ends with a magnificent asparagus and a fountain, as if the connection is perfectly obvious, as if the sound and rhythm of language is enough to create meaning. What I'm after is taste and quantity. Even from one end of the raspberry patch to the other, a distance of only 50 feet, the berries differ. The canes at the northern end are weaker, and the raspberries smaller and more astringent than nearer the house, nearer the slope, where the log crib version of a septic tank was buried. At the north end of the raspberries, the shovel sliced mud and loosened grass, but the next time I stomped it, the blade clunked against ice, not permafrost, but a remnant of winter. Frozen earth blocks drainage of meltwater, and each spring a pool forms in the adjacent hayfield. The shallow pond lingers long enough to attract a few migrating ducks and geese. As the ground thaws, the water percolates downward, and the pond vanishes. Weeding raspberries is triage, not surgery. Unlike currants or strawberries, raspberries appear on 2-year-old canes. During their first year, canes grow tall and willowy, spawning a jungle of leaves that hide stickery stems. 2-year-old raspberry canes are branched and easily break, cracking like dry sticks, but they have berries. Canes older than 2 years are faded bones speckled with orange dots that might be lichen or fungus, in any event, aiding decomposition. Canes supported by their younger sisters, like siblings, emerge from the same roots. So that is I don't know, maybe it's mundane, but also the, I don't know, whimsy sometimes is just something that I just love about being able to write and find those points. So let's see here, one more thing on this. Okay, one more thing about the process of writing. So as you know, this went on for quite a number of years, and then in 2019, I don't know, about September, seems like we were on a trip somewhere, I got an email from the University of Alaska Press, and they said, we want to publish your book. What? I'm like, what a surprise, because the whole way through they would send me comments and I would make revisions, but I didn't know if they really want to publish the book or not, or they just want to see, what I was going to be able to manage. And always in my head, I thought, if this book ever gets published, I need a map. And, oh, good, Ruth is still here. Hi, Ruth. I need a map. And then suddenly there's this big rush. And of course, as you know, this doesn't feel like a rush because now it's a year later, but some of that is due to the pandemic. And so I contacted Ruth Hulbert, who managed to rearrange her whole schedule. And let's see, you can maybe see there is a gorgeous map in this book that reflects the Alaska, the surroundings, places that I mentioned, and I guess, Ruth, it's not to scale. It's an artistic rendering of a map, and so it will help a reader make sense of where the places are that people who haven't been around in Alaska very much maybe might not recognize. So anyway, there's a gorgeous map, and the second shout out for Ruth is that UA Press also worked with her too. Can you see the cover? And you guys who've ordered it have seen it, to do this wonderful artwork for the cover. So thank you, Ruth. Ruth is there, and Helen is there, Helen Hulbert and Ruth Hulbert. So glad you guys are here. And I think, Julie, that's enough from me.
Yeah, that's perfect. We had a question about where in Alaska it takes place, and you had mentioned the valley, but that map helps so much because for a lot of us, Alaska is still so unknown, and, you watch certain shows and you get an idea. Marilyn did ask if this is your first book.
I had a chapbook of poetry published, 2013 or 2014, by Uttered Chaos Press in Eugene. So this is the first book that looks like this. So it's very exciting.
That's awesome. So for geographical purposes, I guess, how close was the closest town to you?
Yeah.
Because we do feel like that a lot, right? In Alaska, you can be really out of the normal town limits.
Right. And somewhere along the line, there was a description that I had nothing to do with. It made this sound like where we were living was really remote. It's not remote. We live 4 miles from the town of Palmer, and commuting distance to Anchorage on mostly a 4-lane freeway, and there's even more 4-lane now than there was in the 80s and 90s. So not, remote in the sense that Alaska is not contiguous to the lower 48, but we were near shopping centers and all. We can't claim remoteness, although you could still get snowed in and not be able to go anywhere till you could get someone to plow your driveway or dig the drifts out.
So we've got a question from Bridget. She said, do you spend time in the book talking about the woman who lived there before you?
Bridget, have you read this book? You said women. I'm looking over at the text over there. Um, yes, and I spend time. Well, it's that's interesting because there were. I spent time. What Mrs. LaRose, who would have been the colonist, I spend time imagining. It's very clearly marked. I'm imagining things that she might have done and how she might have lived there and all. And then the people that we bought the house from in 1983, the Webbs, Mrs. Webb gave us tours. So I do not remember where the realtor was when we had the tour. So she shared stories of her life in the house, and some of these that I remember are in the book because it adds, it helps you see the house as a character. House is definitely a character.
And then Heidi asked, how long did you and Chuck live there?
Um, 28 years.
Wow. Yeah. Did you sell it in February?
No, no. I probably started talking about selling it in February. No, I think it's the first time the house actually sold in the summer. And we were really surprised because we thought it would be one of those things where maybe a year later we'd still be trying to sell it. So,
Yeah. Abby asked, who lives there now?
oh, I think that I don't really want to say who lives there now. I'm just not sure about the appropriateness since this will be in a
Is it the people
video.
who bought it from you though, or do you know if
Yes.
it changed hands?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
That's very cool.
Yes. Yes, very cool. Yeah. Yeah,
And
it's just gorgeous. We got after, let's see how many years after we sold it, 7 or 8 years, 9 years, no, must have been 8 years. We got to go back and visit, and it's wonderful. So just the gardens are there, different. Some things are changed, some are the same. It's really nice.
yeah, that's awesome. So Fran asked, what took you to Alaska?
Oh, it's also in the book too, Fran. Well, let's see. I so my husband Chuck Logston um, grew up in Alaska, and I met him at WSU. So we got married, and he had a job in Alaska. So that was like kind of a no-brainer. Go where there's a job.
And so Abby uh, kind of clarified. She said not a name, but is it a family living there? Like, are
Okay, okay, yeah. No, oh, I don't really know how I want. I don't want to do anything for the privacy of who's there now. So I think it's just in such good hands. So I'd like to leave it at that.
good. Um, let's see. Heidi asked, can you elaborate on the economic disruptions?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Heidi, is there some particular disruption you're thinking about?
Heidi, we can also unmute if you would like to talk
Yeah, that would be
to
good.
Katie directly. Feel free to do that, or I can, here, hold on. I can go down.
Yeah,
There we
just
go.
in the little description that was on the bookstore website, it talks about um, also offered lessons in economic disruptions and how ideas of normalcy change.
Oh, okay. Okay. Oh. Yeah, that's interesting. I one of the big ones was the oil crisis. That was before I moved there. 1972 or 73 where there was the meltdown with OPEC and anyone who was driving back in that time in the US maybe remembers the gas lines and that sort of thing. So that one, the people who lived there before us, I'm surmising it was at about that time because it would make sense that they added a coal furnace. So the house being in the country, so to speak, when we moved there, there was later natural gas showed up there, but there wasn't natural gas when we moved in. So it was the oil tank, and the oil burning furnace was, how the house was heated, an Alaska house, for a lot of months every winter. And so the effect, it seemed to me, and I don't really, I didn't think to ask them this, but it seemed like that must have been a deal because the oil furnace was put in at some point when the previous owners were living there. That since there, the coal furnace, I'm sorry, since there's coal fields not far from Palmer and back, I don't know, previous times, they're pretty inactive right now. They were a big deal. And so in the 70s, for sure, people could get coal if they wanted to have a coal furnace. So that's like, there was a disruption, and then there's a coal furnace in the house, we move in, there's an oil and a coal furnace, which is like super weird. Who wants to have like a dual furnace system in their house, when it's two big fuel burning things, right? Yeah. So I think disruptions that show up in the book, economic disruptions, probably mostly having to do with resources. I have another spot where I mention about going from the coal fields that are northeast of Palmer being sidelined once natural gas was developed in Cook Inlet and started being able to fuel electricity in Anchorage and that sort of thing with the natural gas. It takes a long time, but you can find a spot in the 60s where not much was happening with the Matanuska coal, and the natural gas was coming on off of Cook Inlet. So I could probably think of some more examples, but there's a couple of resource ones. So what's the next question?
Bridget just had a comment. She said, congrats on this book. Alaskan women writers have done amazing work with sense of place. Nancy Lord, hold on, it just popped down. The woman from Haynes, etc. You've all helped tell the intimate story of real people's lives. Yeah.
So thank you, Bridget. And in the acknowledgments in this book, there's a lot of people that I thank. And Bridget, I think you're mentioned in the acknowledgments. I don't see where Bridget. Oh, hi, Bridget. Because Bridget was I'm going to get this wrong. The Palmer Arts Council, director of the Palmer Arts Council. Did I get it right, Bridget? Okay. And she was very supportive of my writing and opportunities to do workshops, and also, I've got to tell this story, Bridget. The Arts Council was going to have an annual meeting, and they needed a feature poetry. So she asked me if I'd write a poem about the water tower. So I said, what? What the heck? Who wants to, a poem about the water tower? So anyway, ended up with a poem, did a bunch of research, had some historical information in it, and a bunch of whimsy, and it worked.
That's awesome. So let's see, we've got a couple more comments. Ginger had previously commented that she pre-ordered the book and she's getting her copy soon and is excited, but she said a testimony to the strength of your memoir and writing ability is the fact your entire critique group attended this Zoom session.
Really? All of you are here? Oh, cool. Yes. And the critique group was on a lot. We should get the group back together, Ginger, Sandy, so awesome. Anyone else who's here? Oh, Val. No, wait, Val. We'd have to do it with Zoom now. What in the world?
Yeah, the times are changing. So I put the information to order the book into the chat if anybody needs that. But again, you can order through our website or call the store directly. we are so thankful, Katie, for you making the time for us tonight as well, and to just be able to open up to tell people about your book. I really enjoy supporting indie authors, indie presses like University of Alaska. University presses are pretty small. And it's really great that everybody joined us tonight. So if we have any final questions, feel free to pop them in the chat, or unmute yourself real quick to say hello. We'll kind of go for a little free for all right now. If anybody wants to say hi to Katie real quick.
Okay, and I'm gonna say thank you to the Central Oregon Accordion Club and Zoom group for showing up too. So I appreciate it.
This is so much fun. Yeah, thank you everybody for being here tonight. You know, obviously we have books coming into the store. This will make a great Christmas present for anybody. People who love to read, people who are interested in Alaska, memoirs. I love memoirs. Yeah, just really great to have you guys tonight.
Thank you. It's always nice to know the author.
It is fun to meet authors. Yeah, little fangirling over here, because I love meeting people who have written books.
And we don't have our accordions on. Nobody recognized you, Katie.
Okay. Oh, okay, right.
All right. Well,
Okay. Well, thank you, Julie, for the opportunity and hosting and letting me talk for an hour.
yeah,
Thank
no
you.
problem.
And thank you everyone who reads the book and enjoys it, I hope.
Yeah, let's see.
Very good. Looking forward to reading it, Katie.
I don't know who is. Sometimes I can't tell who's talking. I'm glad.
That was Joan.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Joan.
You bet.
And
Look forward to reading
thank
it.
you, Katie. That was wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you, Carrie, for a change. Then usually we go to your talk. So now you've heard one of mine.
Congratulations, Katie.
Grateful about coming tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you to the cover designer for being here. It's a beautiful cover. It's really
Thank you. I work in a bookstore, so I see a lot of book covers, and I've developed a lot of opinions about them. I'm trying to think if we've met. We may have run into each other at PNBA sometime. I'm at Fireside Books in
Okay.
Palmer. Yeah.
excellent. Yeah, I was really bummed to not be able to go to PNBA this year.
Oh, I know. I miss it so much.
So much.
Next year's going to be great, though. I
know.
hope.
Yeah, everybody's going to be so excited to be there, and free books and meeting authors. Yeah, it's a wonderful time. So, yeah, thank you for joining us all the way from Alaska.
Yeah, our pleasure. Something to do.
We do Zoom too.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow.
Not like we had to go too far, just to the couch.
Well,
Very good.
thank you everyone for being here tonight. I hope you enjoy the book. Give us a call at Roundabout to get your copy. Katie, again, thank you so much. And obviously, if you ever write another book, you give us a call. We'll have you back.
Okay. Oh, yeah. I'll be so old if I ever write another book, but I will remember that.
Absolutely. All right. Happy holidays, everyone. Be well. And thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah,
Bye.
bye.
Good job, Katie.
Thanks, Fran.
Nice
Thanks,
job.
everyone.
Yeah, can't wait to read it.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.